Previously on The Stephen Kingdom.
You know, Belly, I'm starting to get the feeling the audience is really gonna hate you.
You can't spell hate without E-A-T.
Excuse me, sir. This episode is running long. I'm afraid we'll have to end it here.
But Belly is
Belly will have to wait until next time. Are you done, sir?
This episode is our down and dirty, nuts and bolts episode. The structure and form of the novel CARRIE, the point of view, the literary tricks of the trade Stephen King employs in the novel, the cultural touchstones and illusions.
Sir, your order, please.
Oh, yeah, sorry, forgot.
Oh, just order something. Anything, sweet pea. Literally anything.
Complimentary rolls and water. Not the bottled stuff either. Or the fizzy kind. I don't want to pay for it. I want the free stuff. From the hose.
Very good, sir.
So far, we've talked about getting CARRIE up and running like your favorite Buick 8, the complicated circumstances surrounding its publication, Stephen King's pre-CARRIE writing stops and starts, the huge cultural and financial impact the book had, and the circumstances in King's life that would coalesce into creating the character of CARRIE. Wow, try saying that 3 times fast.
Your complimentary rolls and free tap water that I did not spit in.
By now, there's a chance you may be feeling a little CARRIE fatigue, bit of the old telekinetic slump, as the kids say these days.
We don't say that.
Which is why we're gonna talk about something that's gonna knock your socks off. The novel's structure and form. There's a saying that goes, never judge a book by its cover. Well, I'm here to tell you you can judge CARRIE by its cover. Hey kid, I'm trying to host a You can judge CARRIE by its cover. Well, not its cover per se, because there've been so damn many of them throughout the 50 years of CARRIE's publication. Oh, look, the spirit of that aphorism. Don't pass judgment on something based on its superficial appearance is actually not that helpful in the case of CARRIE, because CARRIE's outward appearance, the fact that it, according to Stephen himself, is a, quote, skinny little thing, is informed by the literary tools and tricks King used to bulk up CARRIE's page length to get it to within spitting distance of novel size. Spitting distance, huh. Spitting distance, why does that make me thirsty all of a sudden for this particular glass of water?
Free tap water that I did not spit.
Ugh, refreshing. You constant watchers of the Stephen Kingdom know by now that Stephen fancies himself a practical, workmanlike author who views the job as just that, a job. And a job pays the bills. Do you know what doesn't pay the bills? A really long short story that every magazine will reject because it'll take up all their pages and force out other much more important things like Cadillac ads and nudie pictures of ladies.
Nudie magazine day!
Back in the pre-CARRIE days of the early 70s, Stephen's #1 priority was putting clothes on the table and food on his family's backs.
Oh, hey, good
Huh?
looking.
Who is that?
Me. Oh, it was me. What a brilliant smile you have there.
And beautiful blue eyes to match.
Hey, sexy. And a dome to my heart.
Oh, I get it. Complimentary rolls.
There is no way to go.
Cursory bookstore shoppers and library visitors looking for some free Wi-Fi and access to a bathroom will note that the thin spine of CARRIE gets lost in a sea of otherwise massively thick phone book-sized book spines in the Stephen King section. And it's CARRIE's thinness, its outward appearance, its cover, as it were, that informs the reader's judgment of what's inside. Because what's inside are two main things King uses to lengthen Carrie from a long short story into a short novel. The omniscient third-person point of view and the epistolary structure. The varying points of view of the novel Carrie are informed by the story's epistolary structure, so why not? Let's go ahead and start with the POV first, shall we? A quick refresher on point of view. There are three main types. The first is, you guessed it, first person. I did this, I did that, etc. The most memorable examples of first-person stories tend to be those with strong, distinct voices. Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Jack Kerouac's On the Road.
You're so smart. Yes. And you cite so many examples.
The second type of POV is checks notes. Second person. It's pretty rare, since it sounds so weird. You did this, you did that, etc. It's not so weird on its own, but pages and pages of that, believe me, it's pretty weird. But it's been done. Jay McInerney's Bright Lights Big City, the Choose Your Own Adventure books, Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, while an essay is an excellent example of the intimate and immediate feeling that this type of POV evokes. And thirdly, you guessed it, third person. You don't even need me, you know where I'm going with this. He did this, she did that, they did this and that, etc. The most common of the POVs and third person can range from extremely limited, zeroing in on a single character's thoughts, feelings, and knowledge of events, all the way to omniscient, wherein we can dip in and out of any character's perspective at any time. It's essentially a God's eye view of the story.
When someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes!
This omniscient point of view is where the main narrative of Carrie lives. And using this omniscient third-person POV in Carrie's main narrative, King gives us everything. We get Carrie's private thoughts. We get insight into the night she was conceived, when her drunk father took her mother against her will. We get the change of heart from the bully-turned-altruistic matchmaker Sue Snell. We get all these nice little juicy bits from just about everybody and their uncle. And just as we're sliding into the main story, like a nice warm bubbly bath, getting used to all this familiar storytelling technique, whoosh, King yanks us out of it and he gives us a newspaper clipping.
Huh?
Which brings us to the epistolary structure of Carrie. An epistolary story is one told through a series of documents. Although oftentimes letters, these documents can be anything. I mean, in Carrie, for instance, they range from newspaper excerpts to interviews with survivors of Carrie's reign of terror, to textbook passages, to graffiti scratched on a desk that simply reads, "Carrie White eats." And epistolary stories can vary in the degree to which they utilize this literary form. Some, like Carrie, use it intermittently to spice up the narrative or provide different points of view, or pad out the page length. Examples of intermittently used epistolary interstitials include David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas, wherein one of the many characters in the novel, Adam Ewing, is portrayed entirely through his journal entries while aboard a ship in 1850. Then there is Lindsay Ellis's excellent Lumina science fiction series, wherein the expansive, globe-trotting narrative is interspersed with all manner of documents, including newspaper articles, confidential emails, and redacted government memos. Now, some epistolary stories, however, are told entirely through documents. Max Brooks's World War Z is written as an oral history of the zombie apocalypse told entirely through individual accounts. But perhaps the most famous example of a fully epistolary novel is none other than Bram Stoker's Dracula. An account of the Count, told through a series of journal entries, letters, and newspaper articles. Carrie would also not be the last time Stephen King would play with the epistolary form. He would go on to use it in countless novels, novellas, and short stories, most notably in The Body and Misery, wherein we get excerpts of the fictional work by the main characters. Gordy LeChance's first published story called Stud City in The Body, and Paul Sheldon's Misery's Return, a new novel his #1 fan Annie Wilkes forces him to write in Misery. But when it comes to Carrie's epistolary structure,
I've been informed by my manager that if you're going to insist on doing whatever it is you're doing, You are to pay for something.
I ate some bad fettuccine a few episodes back. I'm certainly still paying for that. Okay, but I'm taking my complimentary rolls with me.
Don't shoot you off, buddy.
The only thing you'll be taking is a hike.
Oh, yeesh. Whatever happened to the customer's always right?
Sold us.
We worship at your feet.
Patriarch.
Sweetest little things. Where were we before I fully decided of my own free will to leave the previous establishment? Oh, yes, Carrie's epistolary structure. Carrie's epistolary structure is a bit of a love it or hate it wedge issue among readers of the book. Some view it as a naked attempt to stretch the book like taffy out to novel length, which it certainly was. But it does a lot more than just beef up the page count. The epistolary structure actually does a lot of heavy lifting, namely 3 things. 1, it legitimizes some of the more science fiction-y elements for the reader, as we are fed bits of information about
I think
telekinesis.
somebody's getting fed.
Stephen King doles out these facts about telekinesis from a legitimate-sounding book that he totally made up called The Shadow Exploded, Documented Facts and Specific Conclusions Derived from the Case of Carrie White. In his essay, King and the Literary Tradition of Horror and the Supernatural, literary critic Ben P. Indick notes that King
offers evidence to make the remarkable powers acceptable. By setting Carrie a few years into the future, King is able to refer to articles, books, and the work of governmental commissions of inquiry, which have already acknowledged Carrie's telekinetic powers. One such book, The Shadow Exploded, states, "It is now generally agreed that the TK phenomenon is a genetic recessive occurrence. By comparing it to the genetically transmitted disease of hemophilia, King makes it an apparent fact."
From the very first time Stephen quotes from this book, we as readers are lured into a world of the strange by a reputable source claiming that telekinesis is not only a real phenomenon, but that Carrie White almost certainly had this so-called wild talent in spades.
It can hardly be disputed that failure to note specific instances of telekinesis during the White girl's earlier years must be attributed to the conclusion offered by White and Stearns in their paper, Telekinesis, A Wild Talent Revisited, that the ability to move objects by effort of the will alone comes to the fore only in moments of extreme personal stress. The talent is well hidden indeed. How else could it have remained submerged for centuries with only the tip of the iceberg showing above a sea of quackery? We have only skimpy hearsay evidence upon which to lay our foundation in this case, but even this is enough to indicate that a TK potential of immense magnitude existed within Carrie White.
Carrie's epistolary structure lends an air of credibility to the whole telekinesis thing. That is a big deal. 2 more important functions to go. Second, all these excerpts from books and newspaper articles act as a nifty foreshadowing device for the doomed prom to come. Because as we get drawn in deeper and deeper into the story of Carrie, King parses out more and more information via these epistolary elements, giving us a clearer and clearer picture of the horror that will befall Carrie in her doomed town of Chamberlain, Maine. Richard Matheson, writer of such horror classics as I Am Legend and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and an enormously influential figure for Stephen King and his work, says that
Carrie was remarkable in that he kept mentioning some horrendous event which took place and kept the entire book leading to it, which can be very perilous if you don't pay it off properly, and then did pay it off in spades.
Remember, the epistolary bits in the novel Carrie are set in the near future, recounting the horrors from the night of the Black Prom. So, the mere fact that Carrie White is being written about in textbooks and major news outlets signals to the reader that, holy shit, things are gonna get bad. Thirdly and finally, what many naysayers say about the epistolary interstitials, that they constantly yank you out of the narrative and make you feel distant from Carrie and her story, well, to that I say, exactly. That's the point. The point of view, that is. Remember all that POV talk at the other restaurant? The one I left of my own free accord? They act as a counterpoint to the thrust of the main narrative, in which we spend a lot of time in Carrie's head. They take us out of Carrie's head, out of her point of view. Take, for example, this letter excerpt from Chris Hargensen, the alpha bully in Carrie's life and the mastermind behind Operation Pig's Blood at the UN High School prom. To her friend who moved away from Chamberlain to Providence, Rhode Island, Chris writes less than 2 weeks before the doomed prom.
So I'm out of the prom, and my yellow guts father says he won't give them what they deserve. But they're not going to get away with it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, but I guarantee you, everyone is going to get a big surprise.
King does this over and over and over again, at times more than some of his readers may like. He yanks us out of the main narrative, wherein we are empathetic for Carrie White, and shows us not just the aftermath of her wrath, but everything leading up to it from all sorts of angles, like a sort of YA Rashomon.
私は世にも恐ろしい地獄を見た。盗賊、美女、死霊、そしてソマウリ。4つの口が物語る4つの地獄の声を聞かされた。
Yeah, it can get annoying at times, but it's also unnerving in its own way, because the information we get from these generally cold and distant interstitials is not at all positive, as they are all inexorably leading to the ill-fated prom night. And most importantly of all, we need this distance from Carrie. It's oh so easy to empathize with a pathetic loner who gets bullied at school. You know what? You should bring down the town in a nightmarish bloody inferno and kill 400 plus people, including those mean classmates who bullied you and made your life a living hell. You go get 'em, Carrie. These bits and pieces from books and articles are a constant reminder that Carrie's wrath and all the bullying and abuse she's endured over the years has real consequences. In a book about supernatural powers and buckets of pig's blood, it's tempting to dismiss Carrie as just a horror novel, but that's what Stephen King is the king of, staking his claim right out of the gate in his first novel and for many, many novels to come. However fantastical, these are real people who do real things with real world consequences, and we must never forget Carrie White killed people. Carrie White killed a lot of people, many of whom were innocent bystanders, and they're all dead at the terrible telekinetic hands of Carrie White. Even if you don't think the constant interruptions of the Carrie narrative with epistolary elements is the most artful way to structure a novel, you gotta admit, there is no easier way to get in and out of a narrative than by constantly interrupting.
Having been missing for nearly 6 months, things continue to look more dire for David McCracken by the day as the search becomes more and more hopeless. Authorities have indicated that if they do not discover some new lead as to McCracken's whereabouts soon, they will have no choice but to close the case and, for all intents and purposes, declare McCracken dead. Midworld Nightly News' own Viv Bibbles is live once again with our continuing coverage.
Just when I thought the trail leading to David McCracken's whereabouts had gone cold, the stars aligned, and I finally made it here, Chamberlain, Maine, which is where I totally am, thanks to the producers of Midworld Nightly News, prioritizing our missing persons report over, say, third-tier college football, and giving us the money we need to do our jobs right. I even offered to forego my per diem and pay for my own mother***ing hotel. You all want to see some fake news, huh? How's this for fake news? Midworld Nightly News figures you all for a bunch of suckers. Yeah, that's right. Also, they can make a buck and keep your eyes glued to the boob tube while they stick me in front of a green screen. No wonder the fourth estate is dead! This is Viv Bibbles, signing the off!
The novel Carrie sets the table with a number of recurring ideas, themes, and elements that Stephen King will come back to again: religious zealotry, and again, the dark side of childhood. And again, we'll get to all that stuff in the next episode. But another recurring element Carrie exhibits is Stephen King's openly naked allusions to other works, whether they be literary, cinematic, or pop cultural.
Now it's illusion with an A, so If you guys want to put an illusion in there somewhere, like, you know, Poe or something, or don't do Poe, because I'm doing Poe.
What about Chaucer?
Just not Poe.
My favorite example of this is perhaps the most egregious. Right off the bat, Stephen King just flat out steals a major element from Shirley Jackson's seminal horror novel, The Haunting of Hill House. In Hill House, Eleanor Vance seems to exhibit supernatural abilities that are linked to a very strange and very dangerous phenomenon: stones that rain from the sky. Early in the novel, Shirley Jackson describes that when Eleanor was a young girl of 12, quote, showers of stones had fallen on their house without any warning or any indication of purpose or reason, dropping from the ceilings, rolling loudly down the walls, breaking windows, and pattering maddeningly on the roof. And early in the novel Carrie, Stephen King includes this suspicious news clipping.
Rain of stones reported. It was reliably reported by several persons that a rain of stones fell from a clear blue sky on Carlin Street in the town of Chamberlain on August 17th. The stones fell principally on the home of Mrs. Margaret White, damaging the roof extensively and ruining 2 gutters and a downspout valued at approximately $25. Mrs. White, a widow, lives with her 3-year-old daughter, Carrietta.
A supernaturally tormented young girl whose powers are mysteriously linked to stones that fall from the sky. Subtle, Mr. King. Very subtle indeed. This shameless cribbing from Hill House, by the way, would certainly not be the last time Stephen would give a tip of the cap to Jackson's ghost story masterpiece. And he wouldn't even wait very long to do it. It would be all of a year before Stephen would nod yet again to Hill House, quoting it at the beginning of part 1 of his follow-up novel to Carrie, Salem's Lot. Now, I know this is an episode about Carrie and not Salem's Lot, but I'll jump at any chance to quote one of my favorite passages of all time. The first paragraph from The Haunting of Hill House that King uses to preface Salem's Lot.
No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed, by some, to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wooden stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there, walked alone.
But still, allusions to The Haunting of Hill House are small potatoes compared to the 2 very big elephants in the room.
Potatoes would pair just nicely next to a nice warm buttered roll.
I'm talking about 2 other tales upon whose colossal foundations Carrie is built. Draw close, dear constant watcher, as I spin you a yarn. Once upon a time...
Sir.
Once upon a time...
Sir.
Please. Sir is my great... Oh my god, the chef's turned into a werewolf! Oh, there's a familiar face. Woodford double oaked on the rocks. Hold the bourbon.
Time to get crunked, everybody.
Thank you, Lloyd, my man. I'm not gonna pay for this, though. Oh man, that guy's got a tab open. Andy thinks I'm somebody else. He ain't never getting paid.
You've got more open tabs than Google Chrome.
Come with me.
I'm not asking. Okay. You must have me confused with some other person who looks like Brad Pitt, because this is the first time I've ever been here.
You're telling me there's another lunatic rambling about Stephen King other than yourself?
Where is he? I'll kill him! I mean, I guess so.
I did a little research on you. Turns out Chamberlain isn't your first rodeo here in Maine. The Bangor PD has an APB out for a man of your description connected to the disappearances of 2 gentlemen.
They didn't disappear, they're in my trunk. What?
Enough! For years have I lain in wait here in Maine, masquerading as a lowly servant of food, slaving away for tips. For years have I waited, patient and quiet, like a flytrap from Venus for Mother Russia to activate me, and in so doing begin complete and total takeover of America. From within.
Can I speak with the manager?
But then I had what you Americans call a bazinga moment, an epiphany. It was just recently when you, a stupid American with big, poofy, stupid hair.
Nice accent.
That made me realize I am alone. Mother Russia has abandoned me.
Must be nice having a mother.
I find myself helpless and alone here in Maine, with a very big gap in my resume, due to my many years as a spy for Mother Russia in waiting.
What's a resume?
How do I explain this? How do I finesse my LinkedIn to account for these lost years? Simple. I do not take over America. I take over the Stephen Kingdom. I want to host it. This current host, you, is a durak, a bum. And it's time for him to retire.
I don't,
You don't have a choice, exactly. So, we can do this the easy way. Or we can do this the Soviet way.
Do you guys validate?
Or muffin dumpling. We can do this the delicious way.